As long as we are living with fear and sorrow, we cannot flower. There cannot be peace, happiness, love on this earth. So we have to really deeply understand what is this fear, what is the source of it, and what is sorrow. And when we understand something deeply, a miracle happens. And that miracle is that the thing which we understand deeply dissolves in that understanding. Understanding absorbs any problem. So the key to freedom is this deep understanding. And this deep understanding is not just intellectual understanding. We mistake the intellectual understanding as something whole, but that is only partial. It has its place, but that cannot bring about transformation. Transformation and freedom come when there is a direct contact with the problem and going to the very root of the problem. So let us go very slowly and understand what is fear and what is sorrow. How do they come into existence? One of the fundamental problems with all of us is that we live unexamined constructs of the mind. Mind is very useful for our physical survival, but the same tool becomes quite inadequate, limited for understanding life, for living with peace, with harmony. And because we have become so used to of living with the construct of the mind, and this construct is created by our thinking process, our memories. When thought and memories are psychologically activated, then they create a totally different, unreal world, a world of imagination, which can be good for a novel, for a fiction, but to really live life fully, deeply, we have to come out of this illusory world. And mostly these memories and thoughts are dominating our consciousness with all the stories. And when we do not question these constructs, these stories, we consider them as true. For example, one of the constructs of the mind is that if I am born in India, I just start treating myself as Indian as opposed to other people. So once I start believing in this construct, then I remain only at a superficial level. I do not go deep into myself. Who am I? Then I am living only at a level of certain category as a label. And I am meeting myself through that story which I have been told since childhood. And the other human being is also meeting himself with the stories which he or she has been told since childhood. And we meet life through the screens of these false layers, through the screens of conditioning. Then the question is, am I really meeting myself fully? Am I meeting others fully? Am I meeting life fully? I am only meeting the projection of that construct. Then how can there be harmony? How can there be peace? And the fear is born when I do not understand myself fully. when I do not meet life fully, when I am just driven by these constructs, which are only projections of my mind. So, is it possible to move away from these constructs? And that would be the real shift or transformation. If I can discover myself as I am in the true sense. So, first of all, I have to examine all these layers, which I believe them to be true. But once I start examining them, I can discover that they are not true. They are part of this conditioning of human consciousness. So, what are the tools for this exploration? Usually, we think that there is a tool of thought, which is basically based on memories. When memories are activated, they take the form of thoughts, and it is always dependent on the past. So, this tool of thought and intellect is quite useful for our physical survival, for technological knowledge. But this tool itself cannot provide me the true self-knowledge, understanding of life as a whole, because thought is limited. All knowledge based on thought is limited. Is there any other tool which we can use for this exploration, for knowing oneself? So once we start examining these constructs, not from the tool of thought, because that construct is based on thought. And if we examine it from a wider space of awareness, then we can see what it is. What is the reality of these constructs? And part of this awareness is this pure observation. And this pure observation is not based on any background. It is to see things as they are. And when I understand, when I clearly see how I am living as memories, as past stories, all these images, and these constructs based on memories and stories are separating me, are limiting me. And once there is a separation, there will be conflict, and this conflict will lead to fear and sorrow. Then my whole life becomes kind of a circus created by these constructs. I am running after those things which are imaginary. For example, if I am running after power, running after dominating others, that means I don't realize who am I. There is a weakness, because whenever I need power and domination on other, that need is false. It's not real. It is projected by the mind. And then my whole life becomes a struggle. I need to show others. I have to be recognized. I should be dominating others. This is the whole movement of the self, ego. So ego itself is a construct of the thought. And when we are driven by that ego mind, then we are pursuing false goals. I'm pursuing those things which actually don't exist apart from my thoughts. And if I am pursuing, desiring something which is non-essential, which does not exist, it will lead to illusions. And then there will be suffering. So sorrow is born when I am desiring those things which are non-essential. As Buddha also said, craving is the root cause of sorrow. Craving for something which is illusory, which does not exist, apart from this ego mind. So can I see very clearly what this mind is doing? And can I see the danger of living with any construct? Once it becomes clear that it is dangerous, destructive to live with any illusion, then my system, my whole brain will hesitate to go in that direction. Because it is not clear, I walk on that path which leads to suffering. Then fear and suffering becomes a way of life, of course, with occasional pleasures. What is the source of fear? Fear comes when I am not facing what is the reality. Mind has created some reality based on its own projections, and I'm not really looking at it. I'm considering it as something true. And then I'm avoiding it. So when I don't face the reality, then fear comes. And in a deep sense, fear and sorrow, they are the shadows of this process of craving, desire. And it doesn't mean that I have to get rid of desire. When they tend to create these illusory goals, then they become destructive. This desire for domination, power, this is the cause of war, which is happening. We can see now. Some people, a group of people, they want to dominate others. Why? When everybody has so many problems to be solved, we need to address this whole issue of poverty, people who are hungry, and every citizen, every human being needs this peace, harmony. But from where this yearning, craving comes to dominate others? It is something tremendous. How can mind become so illogical that it starts to dominate, exploit others? And in this process of deep self-centeredness, I become simply blind after this whole craving to dominate, to have more and more than the others. And this whole drive is born out of ignorance. When I don't see the danger of this self-centeredness, the danger of living identified with the ego mind. That's why this self-knowledge is so important. If I don't understand myself, I will end up creating destruction for myself and for others. And this happens with perhaps most of us in small ways. And we all contribute to the war. Because if there is no peace inside me, how can there be peace outside? The beginning of peace is within oneself. And it can only begin when there is a deep understanding of oneself, this whole mechanism of oneself. Then I can watch if I am living identified with these constructs, with this ego mind, which is a creation of thoughts. Once it is seen that it is only a dead thing, it's only part of memories which are already gone. And I am trying to find security in that whole area, within the field of construct. And because I am living identified with these constructs, which are already in a deep sense dead, so there will be fear all the time. I will always be in need to secure myself, protect myself. So can I realize that there cannot be any security as long as I am living identified with these constructs, with this ego mind? Whatever security I may gather, I will always be insecure. Because this mind which is living identified with all these illusions will never be secure. It will always need more and more. I like this story of Alexander the Great. You might have heard when he was going on the mission to conquer the world, he went to see his teacher. Perhaps it was Diogenes, and he was lying near the sea beach. And Alexander went to seek his blessings. So he said, I have come to you. The teacher asked, who was lying down on the beach, for what? And Alexander said that I'm going to conquer the neighboring nation. So teacher listened. Okay, and then what will you do? He said, then I will try to conquer another nation. And then I will try to win over the whole world. And that teacher silently listened and asked, then what will you do? And then Alexander said, then I will rest. And the teacher smiled and said, what is stopping you from resting now? You don't have to conquer the whole world in order to rest. But apparently he could not, Alexander the Great could not receive the teachings. He could not understand because he was totally driven by this ego mind. Living with this ego mind is the cause of all suffering, is the cause of all fears. Because I am living with something which does not exist. I am forcing myself to believe in something which is not true. And then always in need to protect itself. Then there is a division. I live identified with my illusion, with my story. And out of those stories, I'm meeting other stories. What will happen when two stories meet? Do you think there will be harmony and peace? It is impossible. There will be only misunderstandings, hurts, sorrows, suffering. One story trying to dominate the other is trying to dominate or defend. So when we will realize life is not in living with illusions. Life begins when I realize my true essence, the true being which is beyond this ego mind, which is beyond all these constructs. Why don't I realize this great gift of life? Why I am betraying this sacred trust of this beautiful earth, this universe? And this short period of time, what I am doing? Am I bringing peace and harmony, love and compassion within myself? Am I discovering it every day? And this can only happen if I am awake, if I am aware, watching myself, what I am doing, listening deeply to my heart, listening to other human beings, listening to the suffering of oneself and the other, and going to the very root of it. Because this is a fundamental demand not to suffer. If body gets any wound, the whole intelligence of the body is working to heal the wound. Similarly, if we are suffering psychologically, wounded, hurt, living with fear, then we cannot grow, we cannot flower. That's why a deep healing is required for all of us. We are suffering from this ego mind, and then this ego mind is trying to end the suffering. It is not possible. The ego mind has to stop, cease, pause, so that the other energies, other faculties can flower. One can look at this ego mind from this space of awareness. And this looking is non-verbal, because the difficulty is that we don't know how to look, how to be aware. Usually thought is dominating, and what thought does, or what ego mind does, first of all, it names it. It begins with labeling, with naming, then judgment. If there is some fear or loneliness, I call it loneliness. And then the moment I call it loneliness, there is a whole baggage story behind it. It is bad. I should not be lonely. And then I try to do something about it. This is the whole movement of thought or ego mind. But looking is something which does not involve any naming. There is no judgment in the looking. There is no saying this is good or bad. And even this motive is not there that somehow it should end. So can I hold this feeling of whether fear, sorrow, or any sense of hurt, trauma, in the space of attention, in the space of awareness, holding a fact in the open space of awareness. And in that awareness, which Krishnamurti calls choiceless awareness, the fact that feeling can flower and die on its own. Not I try to make it end. If I is involved, then it will only complicate it. Because both I, which is trying to end that fear, and the fear, they are created by thought, by the same energy. The ego, and which is experiencing fear or sorrow, both are the creation of the same energy. That's why Krishnamurti says that observer is the observed. Observer, which is the ego, the me, and the observed, fear. We think they are separate, And once we believe it is separate, the ego tries to do something, forgetting that the source of both is the same. It is thought which creates the me, the sense of me, and it is thought which also creates sorrow. So can we understand the source of both? Thinking gives birth to the ego, the self, and also the fear and suffering. If it is seen for what it is, then conflict ends. Then there is this whole struggle and wastage of energy. I am trying to end fear. I am trying to end sorrow. But the I itself is sorrow. The I itself is fear. It's the same movement. It becomes clear when I am looking, when looking is happening. Even this sentence, I am looking. Of course, linguistically we can say it, but more accurate or precise would be when there is a looking, when there is this deep listening, awareness. Now, in this looking, there is no ego required. Looking itself is complete. There can be looking from all the senses, from the whole of the brain, not one part of the brain, not one center in the brain. If only thought is looking, then it will create division and then conflict and all that. But in this space of pure observation, there is a watching of that emotion, which I am calling fear. Because there is no labeling, then there is no judgment, it is good or bad. And I am not trying to do anything. In that space of observation, that feeling, that emotion, which I was calling fear earlier, has freedom to flower and die on its own. Then mind is not generating suffering automatically, habitually. Then I am invoking a different kind of intelligence in my system, in the human body. A different kind of capacity is being awakened. And this capacity is this capacity to observe, to perceive clearly, to listen something deeply. This instrument, this energy is so precious, so significant. And this is very unfortunate that we have lost this capacity because of this over-dependence on the tool of thinking. Awareness is not mine or yours. It is just awareness. Without awareness, life is not possible. So why am I missing this beautiful quality of life? Once this quality is awakened, and it can happen right now, when we are deeply listening, this listening itself is awakening of a different kind of intelligence. It can see clearly what is false and what is true. This whole construct of the ego mind is false. It can be seen. All identifications, psychological identifications, they are false and they are destructive. They can be seen instantly. I can see the danger of being self-centered. And this space of pure observation is also pure love. It is born out of compassion. It's passion for life, not passion directed to one object, but passion for life, to live life fully, holistically.